Okay, so I will explain to you what you need to do for your project. Uh, you need to design an experiment on how to measure something. To give you one example, let's say you want to measure the uh, the best frequency for LED to light up. So, say you have something like a timer, 555 timer, and then this timer need a driver. So you have a driver, and this is your LED and the test. So what you need to do, you have a LDR or a light sensor. It can be a photodiode, LDR or phototransistor. So what you need to do is to measure the voltage or the resistance of the LDR based on the frequency that you give. So you can plot a graph depending on the intensity and also the frequency that you give. So let's say this is frequency and this is the intensity. So what you need to do is that you need a reference for this. So you need a light, and you can use your phone with a lux meter, and then you vary the intensity so that you can relate the one that you read and the one that you measure over here. So let's say something like this. This is your supply, you vary this thing, and you have this, and you have your lux meter. So you put this thing next to this, so now you can have this thing, frequency versus intensity based with respect to the lux that you measure. This is one example. Or you can do some other things. Let's say you want to measure the inductance of a capacitor. So you can do the same thing. You can generate a pulse, very narrow pulse, and you put it into a capacitor. So you need to put something that will shoot up the capacitor. Usually the resistance for this, the internal resistance of your probe is 50 ohms. So you can put 50 ohms, and you have your capacitor over here. Then you put into your scope. So you put it into your scope. So what you need to measure is how this thing will react, and then from this reaction you can find the inductance in this capacitor. This is one example. Or you can do a lot of things. This is 1, 2, or maybe you want to know the speed of a motor or of a fan or something like that. Say this is, say you have a motor, you have 4 blades, and right here you will have your LED, and here is your LDR or your photodiode. So when this thing cut through the what do you call it, the LDR, this thing will generate pulse. So now from this pulse, what you need to do is you have to convert this thing into sine wave. So from this sine wave, you put it into a low pass filter, then you can have a relation between the speed with the voltage that you measure from the output of your low pass filter. So let's say you want to do this. If you have your if you have if you know some idea what is your rotation, then you can convert this thing. Let's say in this you have your pulse. You can put it into something like a so this thing will give you a sine wave, and then you put into low pass filter. So this thing will give you an output, and then you need to compare this thing with the one that you know. So you have your frequency into a low pass filter. So this is your reference. You will have your output. So now you can relate between the frequency and output with this the output that you have and you can relate the frequency with this thing. So you can plot the graph, then you can do this thing. You can do the relation between the speed of the fan with the frequency that you made with the output with respect to the reference frequency that you give to a low pass filter that you know. Okay, there are a few things that you can do. In fact, there are many things that you can do in your project, but remember there are a few topics that already saturated. Let's say you want to measure the weight of a device or any mass. One thing that you can do is that you can put a spring and then you put it into a Wheatstone bridge, in one of the arm of your Wheatstone bridge. So something like this. If you can measure what is the resistance of this, you can relate between mass and the resistance. So now you have, because you know that the spring will change and it will also change the resistance of the spring. So this is one way. There are lots of things that you can do. Okay, now when you want to propose your titles, there are a few things that you are not allowed to propose. This is one. Nothing to do with capacitor or inductor or measuring mass, because I've seen this thing quite a lot. Let's say if you want to measure mass, it's also possible, but using moment of inertia. This is possible. Means that you have a pendulum, you try to find the frequency and relate the frequency. For this here, what we want you to do is that in your project you have to include some electronic design. Remember that you have to start your project from scratch. It is not like, you download everything that you want from the internet. You have to work everything from scratch. You design it part by part. Let's say you want to have MOI like this. You want to find what is the moment of inertia. So you need a pendulum. You need to swing the pendulum, and then you need to find the time taken with the mass. So how to measure the time taken using your electronic knowledge, and then relate this thing with the mass so that you can find what is the mass of the pendulum. This is quite easy. You can put something like a LDR over here, LDR over here, and then you run a square waves. So this thing clock, unclock, the D flip-flop, and then you measure this thing. This is one way. From this you know what is the time, relate the time with the mass. Okay, so you can start propose your project title starting from tomorrow, and then you can send it to in a one piece of paper with a short description of what you want to do. Just write your name, your group, from which day, and then a short paragraph describing what you want to do. Short paragraph, maybe about 10 to 15 lines, or some figure maybe to describe your project. Prepare several titles, maybe 3 to 5, because the rejection rate is very high. And then you can pass it to Nazri for this. I will come next week and talk about what you need to do for your project, and if this thing is approved, then only you can continue. If it is not approved, then you need to propose a new titles for your project. Okay.